the average students get 4 to 4.25 marks on an average in 10 marker question. Above average student get 4.5 to 4.75 or 5. Each and every aspect is the most critical one as far as the presentation aspect is concerned, and with the help of the toppers answers. This particular map you won't find in any of the standard book. You won't find it in Nitin Singhania, you won't find it in your NCERT, you won't find it in Tamil Nadu book. In any book you won't find it. Good morning all of you. In the today's session of the conclave, we'll be dealing with one of the important aspects of the answer writing, that is the presentation, right? In the previous session also we have seen the 4 core aspects of the answer writing, which are the first one being the content. Okay, this we have already dealt in our X factor notes, right? The second aspect is the demand understanding. The third, structuring. And the fourth is presentation. Right. These 2 aspects we covered in our previous session, where I discussed the meaning of the meaning of the different directives and how you can structure your answer as per the directives and as per the question statements. So in today's session, we will be dealing with the presentation aspect of the answer writing. Okay, so presentation aspect basically, so as far as the presentation aspect is concerned, so apart from increasing the aesthetic appeal of your answers, it is the presentation and innovation which gives you that extra 0.5 marks. Okay, so if you see or if you analyze the marks of the 3 categories of the students, one category is the average students who write mains but couldn't clear mains. Second category is above average, who appear for interview or get 500 plus rank, or you can make it 300 also. And last is the toppers, who get into the top 50. Okay. And if you analyze their marks properly, you will find that the average students get 4 to 4.25 marks on an average in 10 marker question. Yeah, the above average student get 4.5 to 5.75 or 4.5 to 4.75 or 5, and toppers get 5.25 to 5.5 marks in the 10 marker questions. And if you check the difference, so this is the difference of around 1 mark between average student who couldn't clear the mains and the topper, 1 to 1.25. So 1 mark into total of 79 answers in the GS. So that is the difference of 80 marks in the GS itself. Even between these 2, there is a gap of about 0.5 mark, which makes the difference of 40 marks in the GS and which makes the difference in the ranks. So if you see the topper, that is those who get into top 50 or top 10, they just have that extra 0.5 marks in per question. And that extra 0.5 marks comes majorly. One is the unique content. It doesn't mean that each and every point that they are writing is unique. Okay, so if they are writing 11 to 12 points, out of that 1 or 2 points are innovative, okay, which can involve the global best practice or case studies or some kind of the quote, etc. And the second aspect is the presentation aspect. Okay. So the uniqueness, bringing uniqueness in the content is already covered into your X factor. Well, where I have tried to give multiple quotes, global best practice, state level best practices, as well as the specific examples which you can use as the case studies. But for the presentation aspect, I will be giving you the framework. Using that framework, you have to try to inculcate that into your answer writing. Okay. So let's start. So first, why presentation is important. So as far as the presentation aspect is concerned, if you go into the theoretical aspect of it, it is important for making the first impression. Okay, so see, I am giving you a fact. The fact is, each and every paper of yours will be evaluated in maximum of 20 to 25 minutes. Okay. Secondly, the evaluators have zero accountability. Okay, you don't have any opportunity or avenue to get your copy rechecked or to get the Xerox copy of it or see the mark distribution, right? So evaluators have the zero accountability. Secondly, because of the sheer amount of the copies that they had to evaluate, and because of the time management issues, your each and every copy will be evaluated in 20 to 25 minutes at max, right? So because of that, it is your responsibility to make the job of the evaluator easier in order to get good marks. That's why the first impression is the most important one. Okay. So if you have the better presentation, okay, it will immediately catch the eye of the evaluator. Okay, so if there is a visibility aspect in the presentation wherever you know this point is my unique point or this point is my brownie point or can fetch me more marks, you have to bring in some sort of the innovative aspect in order to attract the attention of the evaluator. Okay. And that will create a good first impression and will result into the extra mark. Second, the presentation also involves, okay, or is also a reflection of your conceptual clarity and confidence, because the presentation aspect, generally the graphs and charts, they are used to decode the complex phenomena or complex concepts. For example, the diagrams of the cyclones or diagrams of any of the processes, just simplify and present it in a very simple manner. For example, the impeachment process of the president, rather than writing it into the point format, if you use a flowchart highlighting the step-by-step process, that will give the sense of clarity in your thought and conceptual clarity. Okay. And if there is a good first impression, then automatically the examiner will be more receptive to your content. Okay. Next, it also demonstrates your professionalism and maturity. Like I said previously also, the answer writing has become very competitive. Okay, if you see the answers of toppers for 2015, 16, 17, and if you compare them with the toppers of 2022, 3, 4, okay, you will find a stark difference between their answers because of the content that is available to you, because of uh, the decoding of the nuances of the answer writing, okay, and because of the maximum practice that the aspirants are doing. The answer writing in itself has become a most important aspect for the mains. Okay, Raj, so it's not just the content, but the other aspects of your answer like structuring and presentation have become equally important. Okay, so it helps you communicate clearly, present complex ideas simply, and the presentation which you can use to cover multiple dimensions shows your analytical capacity. Okay. Again, this is just the theoretical. Even if you forget everything about it, it's completely fine. Now we'll be coming to the practical aspect. Why you need the presentation. Now each and every aspect is the most critical one as far as the presentation aspect is concerned, and with the help of the toppers answers, I am going to show or I am going to prove each and every aspect. So first one is to cover the implicit demand. Implicit demand basically means hidden demand. And second, to provide a context after the introduction. Okay, so how it is done? It's simply see. So implicit demand basically means to address the hidden demand, and context means giving the background of the theme. Okay, so if you see, this is the answer of AI to Akshat Jain. Now, if you read the question says that in the context of major challenges that have restricted industrial growth, there is need for new industrial policy to enable the industry to fulfill its role as an engine of growth and shoulder the responsibility of adding more value and jobs. So basically they are asking, in context of major challenges, there is need for new industrial policy for engines of growth and value addition and jobs. So here in the context of major challenges, so basically they are asking the context. Okay, so after the introduction, he has simply used the flowchart where in one single page he was able to cover 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and 9 points. Okay, this is how you address the hidden demand or the implicit demand. Some more questions. For example, again this. So the critical position accorded to speaker in Indian legislature make it imperative to protect them from undue political pressure and incentives. Examine. So if you see, the core demand of the question is making or protecting the speaker from political pressure and incentives, but hidden demand is the keyword is crucial position. Again, you can use a flowchart, and in the minimum of the space you can cover 5 to 6 points. Okay, same thing here. When wetlands are being lost rapidly due to encroachment and rapid urbanization, in this context, that is the reasons encroachment and urbanization, analyze provisions of the. So here is your directive, which is to analyze provision of new wetland rules. Okay, but the factors responsible which they have given, encroachment and urbanization, which is your implicit demand, needs to be elaborated using the diagrammatic form. Right? So this is the first aspect where you address the context or you provide the context, and you, along with the context, you also address the implicit or hidden demand of the question. So it is not just Akshat Jain. So if you see answers of Gamini Singla AR 3, here also open government data can be seen as step towards greater transparency and accountability in India. So this is your implicit demand where there is no directive. So in this context, discuss benefits and challenges. So before moving to the benefits, she needs to address this first part of the question, that is importance in transparency and accountability. So open data, transparency, accountability by openness in public domain, responsiveness and answerability. Okay, so with the limited of space, you can easily address your hidden demand using a flowchart. Okay, that is your first presentation aspect that you need to keep in mind. Secondly, these are the answers of Utkarsh Dwivedi. He had 118 marks in GS1. So if you see his answers specifically of the modern history or any other paper, so wherever there is any kind of the question related to the freedom movements, or any topic related to the modern history, before moving on to the core demand, after the introduction, what he simply did, he provided the background of that. So for example, this question is, neither the mode of inception nor provisions of Government of India Act 1935 were agreeable to Indian opinion. Discuss. Right. So basically, the core demand of the question is to highlight the issues in the Government of India Act 1935. But what he did, before moving on to the core demand, he provided the context or the background, that is events leading up to the Government of India Act 1935. There's a civil disobedience movement, Gandhi-Irwin Pact, Round Table Conference, MacDonald-Pune Pact, right? So this is the chronology of the events that he highlighted. Similarly, on the question on Quit India movement, again after the introduction, events leading to the Quit India movement, and he has provided the chronology. So this kind of the innovation, again it is not the demand of the question, but this kind of the innovation or uniqueness catches the attraction of the evaluator. And this also shows your understanding of that particular topic. So if you know the causes behind the Quit India movement or causes behind the Government of India Act 1935, and if you are able to provide it in a proper chronological way, that will add depth to your answers, right? Similarly, if you see, for any scheme, questions on any scheme, any government policy or any act, okay, for these three, whatever the demands of the questions are, after the introduction, you have to mandatorily give the features or provisions of that scheme, policy or act. Okay, this is the answer of AR 4 Smruti Mishra. The question is on the issues in the implementation of RTI Act. So introduction, she has given it with the objective of the act, but after that she has given the features. Okay, so remember, whenever there are any questions on the schemes, policies of the government or any acts, always after the introduction briefly give the features of it. Okay. Next, here also the question, this is also again of Smruti Mishra, is on the productivity of the parliament. Okay, here basically in the question what they are asking, highlight the issues impacting the effective functioning of the parliament. Okay, so basically the question is about the analysis or the major issues in the functioning of the parliament. So after the introduction, briefly, before going to the core part of the question or the core demand of the question, what you do, you briefly use a flowchart and highlight the functions of the parliament. This will reflect your knowledge. This will reflect the content depth that you have, and this will also ensure the maximum dimension coverage into your answers. So only in the limited space, okay, in the same space you could have written maximum of 2 points, but in the space of 2 points using a flowchart, briefly she has given 6 points. Okay, and again, as that was not the core demand of the question, there is no need for the elaboration and substantiation of the points. Only this much is sufficient, right? Next, so this was the first aspect, where whenever you are to address the hidden demand of the question, or whenever you want to set the context, or on the questions related to the schemes, government policies and acts, you have to provide the context or background or the chronology of the events, okay, or features and provisions of that particular scheme, policy or act. Okay. The second aspect where the presentation helps you is to bridge the content deficit as well as the content overload, right? So see, there are few subjects like art and culture or geography or world history, or you can also say the science and tech, right? There are these few subjects where you face the issue of content deficit. If they ask you some random question, it is difficult for majority of you to fill the 2 pages. For example, once UPSC asked the significance of the bull in Indian mythology. Okay, so you all know the significance of the bull, but you won't be having the dimensions or the content to fill the entire 2 pages, right? And in majority of the art and culture cases, questions, you generally feel the content deficit, even in geography, physical geography questions, or in world history, right? So here the presentation aspect helps you bridge that content deficit. How? Let's see. Okay, so it helps you basically to fill the page with limited content. Okay, we are talking about the content deficit. Just for example, this is answer of Ishita Kishore. Okay, the question reads, with examples, discuss how cultural traditions from various regions of India get reflected in regional music. So basically they are asking about the significance of regional music, right? So here she had a limited content, she had just 6 to 7 points, and it was not sufficient to fill both the pages. So what she simply did, after the introduction, she used the map and highlighted the different regions. Okay, this particular map you won't find in any of the standard book. You won't find it in Nitin Singhania, you won't find it in your NCRT, you won't find it in Tamil Nadu book. In any book you won't find it. But in all the books, you will find the content on the regional music. You know the regions, you know their regional traditions. Based upon that, you can simply bring out your creativity and draw a map, right? So in art and culture, that is why it is most important that whatever theme you are preparing, you need to have your map ready. For example, and that is precisely why in our X Factor notes on ancient, medieval and art and culture, what we have done is, the whatever topic we are covering, we have tried to provide you one ready-made map. So in case there is time crunch, or in case there is the content deficit, at least your half a page will be filled with introduction and the map. So this is Mauryan Empire. These are the different diagrams. Again, this is the map. If you get a question on the Ashokan inscriptions, you can simply point out this map. Then this is your Gupta Empire. Again, there is a proper map. Right. So for every theme that we are preparing, we are providing you with the maps, specific introduction. And so for example, if they ask you with respect to the temple architecture during Gupta period, again you have the map ready, right? So based upon the analysis of the toppers answers and the requirements of your answer writing, right, we have incorporated these aspects into your X factor notes also. Okay. So then if you see, this will be your Chola Empire. Again, there is a specific map of the Chola Empire, right? So these are the aspects that you need to ensure that are incorporated into your answer writing. Now, the second aspect that you require, or where you require the presentation, is to bridge or to manage the content overload. This issue generally you face in GS3, because if you analyze the papers of last 5 years from 28, not 5, 7 years from 2018 onwards, there has been a constant decline in the marks of the GS3. The average marks in the GS3 are in the range of 90 to 95 or 90 to 100. And the one major reason behind that is the majority of the questions from economics, from art and culture, not art, from economics, from internal security and from disaster management are broader questions. They are not asking you on the specific niche topics. Okay, so they won't be asking you about the specific crops. Rather, they will be asking you about the overall crop diversification issue in India. Right, and because of the broader nature of the questions, what happens is that everybody has the content. And because of that overload of the content, it impacts your structuring. And that is where your presentation aspects come in. So for example, if you see, this is the answer of Shruti Sharma, who had 128 in GS2. Now if you see, the question is, what are the methods used by pressure group to influence public policy? So first core demand of the question is methods used. The second, in your opinion, whether pressure groups broaden democratic participation or subvert larger public interest. So it is a 10-marker question, but it has 3 demands. One is the methods, second, their impact, both positive and negative. So here, to ensure the dimension coverage, the first part, the methods, she has addressed in point format, but here, while highlighting the positive impact of it, she has simply used a flowchart way and in the limited space. So if you see in this space, you can cover only 2 points. But using the representation, she had covered 4 points in the same space. And if you read the answers of AR6, Srishti Dabas from last year, you will find in majority of the answers, she has also followed the same strategy. Why? Because it increases your dimension coverage. So if you see in the 10-marker question itself, she was able to cover 4 points, these 4, and here 2 points. So total 11 points she was able to cover. Okay, so just make sure, and generally what we suggest while highlighting the issues, etc., you first 3 to 4 points of yours should be in point format, and for 5th, you just prepare such kind of the diagram and cover all the remaining issues. That will help you increase your dimension coverage. Because if you see, again, this is the answer of Uma Arati of GS paper 4. She had 132 in GS paper 4. The similar strategy or the similar kind of the diagrammatic representation she has used to cover maximum dimensions. So impact of the greed on individual and society. Okay, so greed is bottomless pit which is harmful not only for self, that is individual, but entire society. So this is greed. Right, and then she has come to the way forward. Similarly, if you see, this is Gamini Singla in the 10-marker question itself. So first, India has an opportunity, efficient supply chain and right marketing strategies. So opportunity to become leading supplier. Then challenges, the 3 points she has addressed in the point format. But for the fourth marketing issue, because of the space, she has used this format, and in this space of 1 point, she has written 3 points. Okay, this is the structure that we suggest. That if you have 7 to 8 points, yeah, so to better manage the space, what you can do, you write your first 4 points in the point format, and then for the fifth point, you use the broader subheading and cover your other points. Or simply, what also you can do is simply use other issues or other benefits, whatever, and simply use a flowchart. This you can find in the answers of Srishti Dabas in multiple answers. Okay, in yesterday's session itself, we have talked about the total dimension coverage that you need into your answers. So for 10 marker, a topper writes 12 to 13 points, and in 15 marker, he writes 16 to 18 points. So to ensure that level of the dimension coverage, you need to have the hold of the presentation. Okay, similarly, she has provided 6 points using a flowchart. So if you see in the 10 marker question itself, her dimension coverage was 1, 2, 3, 4, then 5, 6, and 3, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So in the 10 marker question itself, she was able to write 15 points. Right? This is how you integrate your structure and presentation. Again, if you see, this is the answer of Shakti Dubey. Okay, if you see her answer also, if you read the question, probity in governance, again, she had the highest mark in ethics. She has 141 marks in ethics. So if you see, probity in governance is vital requirement for socio-economic development, without which no real progress is possible. Discuss and support your answer with suitable examples. Right? So basically, the first part, probity vital for socio-economic development, lack of probity leads to, and she has written 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 points. Here she has written 6 points, and then importance of probity or the probity leads to, here she has written 5 points. Right? So this is how you ensure the maximum dimension coverage. Okay, again, if you see the answer of this was again Garima Singla, AR3. Here also, if you see the awareness of cyber threat. So the question, despite geostrategic instability in region and lack of awareness of cyber threat it faces, India has made only modest progress in developing its policy and doctrine of cyber security. So geostrategic instability of the region, point format, awareness of cyber threat, again a diagrammatic representation, where using a flowchart she was able to write 3 points in limited space. Again, here also, with respect to the institutional issues, same format here also. And then at the last page, the core demand, only the modest progress, where she has addressed it in point format. So again, if you check for a 15 marker question, she has covered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 and 7. So total 20 dimensions she put in 15 marker question. And that is precisely the difference between AIR 3 and AIR 300. Okay, any other aspirant or the average or the interview given aspirant would max would have written 15 to 16 point in this. But with again map and the presentation, okay, or the creativity, she was able to cover 20 dimensions in the answer. Okay. Next, again, if you see Shakti Dubey. So misusing of benefits intended for weaker sections of society leads to various moral consequences. Discuss and how can such misuse be prevented. Okay, so again, so misuse of benefits for vulnerable sections. So benefits for weaker sections, she has given the list, and misuse because of lack of checks and balance, exclusion, inclusion error, corruption, and lack of proper data. So if you see in the half or the 3/4 of the page itself, she was able to cover 7 points or 7 dimensions. Right? And then she had come to the core aspect of it, that is the moral consequences of it. Okay, and then the way forward. Again, using a diagrammatic representation. So if you see in the 10 marker question itself, here she has written 7 points, here 6 dimensions, and here 6 dimensions. So in a 10 marker question itself, she was able to manage 19 dimensions, and that is why she is AR1. Okay, where in ethics, in 10 marker theory question, she was able to bring in 19 dimensions. And again, if you see the structuring of her answer, she has addressed each and every keyword that is given in question. Jaise misusing of benefits intended for the weaker sections. So here she has addressed the benefits intended for weaker sections. Jaise legal benefits, constitutional benefits, institutional benefits. Then the misuse of it. So reasons behind misuse are the corruption, lack of checks and balances, okay, inclusion, exclusion error, lack of data. Then leads to various moral consequences. This is a part of the moral consequences of misusing. And last, how can such misuse be prevented? That is way forward. This is her way forward. So if you see, this is how you address a question comprehensively. In day before yesterday session also, we have seen how you have to elaborate upon each and every keyword of the question. Right? And this is how you decode the question, and this is how you address each and every part of the question. Okay? Next is other aspect of the presentation is to give it or bring in the organic answers. Okay. Organic basically means normally in GS papers, so whenever you follow the introduction, main body, conclusion and the points format, the answers appear very mechanical. Right? But to bring in, you can bring in the creativity and innovations with better presentation to give it a organic nature. Okay. Organic basically means where your answers appear natural. It's not mechanical where you have just put the data, where you have just put the points and that's it. Okay. There has to be a scope to the organic content which you can brought by or bring by the quotes, the reference of the different books, the references from the mythology, etc. And that ensures the organic nature of your answers. And it also ensures that your answer flows naturally. Okay. Secondly, it also feels cohesive and well-rounded rather than mechanical. Right. And third, it highlights the creativity and depth. So just to give you a best example of this is Ishita Kishore, so who had 121 in GS1. Okay, so if you see, the post-pandemic India is staring at challenge of learning poverty, analyze its implications, discuss way ahead. So question is very straightforward. And in introduction itself, we have to address this. Post-pandemic India is staring at challenge of learning poverty. So majority of the normal aspirants, what they will do, they will start with the data. Any kind of the data with respect to the learning poverty. Okay. Others, what they will do, they will start by defining the learning poverty because it is a concept. Okay. But what she has done, she has started with the quote. So a nation's classroom determines its future. But empty classrooms reflect erosion of scientific inquiry in youth. So which is nothing but learning poverty. This is how you bring the innovation into your answers. Each and every one of you know this quote, right? But this is how you apply it into your answers. Again, this is something new. It will immediately attract the attention of the evaluator. He will feel refreshing because the 99% of the answers that he has read will be having the definition or data. This will be the refreshing content for him. This will generate his curiosity and he will provide more attention and he will appreciate you more in terms of marks. Similarly, if you see, this is Shubham Kumar. So Gandhian ideals can be of immense help in dealing with COVID-19 pandemic. Evaluate. Again, he has started with the quote. Serving to people is service to God, and best way to find yourself is to throw yourself in service of others. Quotes of Gandhi, and then these words are very important during COVID. Again, very innovative. Right, majority would have started with Gandhi's philosophy of Swaraj, or Gandhi's philosophy of non-violence, or Gandhi's philosophy of service and trusteeship. But we have started with quote. One more innovative way is, again, this is Shruti Sharma. Again, she has started with the quote of fear. Right. But one that I wanted to highlight was this one. It is not GS4. She has 108 in GS3. Okay. If you see, the question was from GS3, technological interventions envisioned under AgriStack will help in increasing the income of farmers and improving the efficiency of agriculture sector by creating seamless digital ecosystem. So basically the micro theme is agriculture technology. Right, it is in GS3. So again, 99% of the aspirants will be starting with some sort of the data on agriculture technology, or they will be starting with any recent context, okay, related to the AgriStack. What she has done, she has used the Premchand's book. So in Indian farmers' image has not changed much from what Premchand called out in his Uski Raat story. Okay, so basically she is saying that the conditions of Indian farmers has not been improved since the Premchand Uski Raat story. And then she has linked it to the core demand in the absence of technological revolution. So in the second part, she has linked it to the theme of the question, that is agriculture technology. The same approach was followed by Ishita Kishore, where she used the quote, nation's classroom determine future, and in the second part, she linked it with the theme of the question, that is post-pandemic India, learning poverty. Same thing was done by Shruti Sharma. Right. So out of the 20 answers that you will be writing, if you can bring such sort of the innovations in 2 to 3 questions, that will add that refreshing value to your answers. Okay. Again, the similar This is the Quit India movement where he used the quote, right? Then this is of Smriti Mishra. This is, I think. Okay. Next, I will be sharing this slide. You can use this slide. The next aspect of the answers or the presentation aspect, which will help you in establishing the interlinking between the concepts. So basically, in many of the questions of UPSC, specifically in the social justice part and in the ethics part, they generally ask you the dynamics between or the relationship between any two of the concepts. For example, they can ask you between the relationship between the education and skill, between poverty and hunger, between integrity and objectivity, between probity and integrity, right? So wherever there is a comparison or wherever there is the relation or the interlinking between two of the concepts, there your diagrammatic representation will come to highlight that dynamics or to highlight that relationship. For example, it will help you in establishing the cause-effect relationship. If you had a question on poverty, where the question was, poverty was not only the cause of the hunger, but also the consequence of the hunger. So there, they asked you about the cause-effect relationship between the poverty and hunger. So in such cases, the presentation will help you establish that interlinking. Second, it will help you connect multiple dimensions clearly. For example, if you have practiced the virtuous and vicious cycle of poverty, in the one single cycle you can highlight the multiple dimensions, right? Then it will help you enhance the visibility of your conceptual bridges. That is basically again establishing the complex relationship between the two concepts into the simpler form, right? And last, wherever you are using a temporal approach in your answers, there you can use a better presentation. I will show you how. Just for example, again, integrity is the choice between what is convenient, what is right. So all the three components of integrity, they had the Smriti Mishra has highlighted the relationship between these three. This is Shubham Sharma. Okay, so increasing participation of people in governance and easy access to information leads to good governance. That is basically what they are asking. Participation plus access to information leads to good governance. Again, he has established the interlinking. Right. Similarly, this by Smriti Mishra only. Again, one innovative, if you see, if the question is on the 7th schedule, everyone will be knowing about the union list, state list and concurrent list. But this is how you establish the interlinking. The question is on the 7th list subject. So what she has done, list 1 center, list 2 state, and the list 3 which is concurrent list, which creates the confusion and confrontation, which was the demand of the question. Right, so rather than simply writing the point, she has used the diagrammatic representation to highlight that particular point. Again, that will catch the attention of the evaluator, and he is definitely going to appreciate that. Right. Similarly, if you see, when writing the answer on the judicial checks, importance of the judicial checks. So judicial checks leads to better functioning of parliament and better quality of laws, which ultimately leads to stable and progressive democracy. So to establish the link between the judiciary and democracy. Okay, so this is where your interlinking aspect can be better reflected using the diagrams. And this is where the presentation will give you that edge of 0.5. Right. Next aspect where the interlinking diagrams are helpful are specifically in the organization related questions. So for example, with respect to pressure groups, with respect to self-help groups, with respect to the NGOs. Okay? If you get such kind of the questions, you can simply highlight their role using this, which we call the input output diagram. So this is with respect to the pressure group. So people provide input and support to pressure groups which lobby with government. So lobby and advocacy, which results into output in the form of public policy, and then there is a feedback mechanism. So this is your input output diagram for the pressure groups. Similar input output diagram you have for the NGOs. So people bring their grievances and needs. People bring their grievances and needs to NGOs, which organize for a cause. So these grievances and needs are advocated by NGOs in the organized form and provided to the government in the form of inputs, which results into the state policies and measures. Right. Similarly, the citizen-centric system, which or the citizen charter, which leads to the effective public service delivery. So the cause-effect relationship, right? So this is specifically helpful in your governance and in your disaster management. So in disaster management, the cycle of the disaster response, okay? Preparedness, response, mitigation, preparedness, response, and then rehabilitation cycle. That is where you can use this kind of the diagrams. Again, the question on the federalism, rather than simply using a flowchart, you can also use a flowchart to highlight the unitary and federal features, or you can use this kind of the diagrammatic representation, which will just add the aesthetic value to your points. This is what I call the use of the presentation whenever you are using the temporal approach. Okay, so basically in temporal approach you use it in the agriculture, where you generate the points based upon so agriculture inputs, productivity, then marketing, and so in productivity it will be yield plus post harvest. This will be marketing, and last value addition. Okay, so if you are highlighting the point or addressing the points using these points or using these as your subheadings, you simply establish the interlinking between these concepts in this way, in the same way that has been done by the Shubham Kumar. Or if you are using the temporal approach in any questions in governance, where your points are as per, suppose the question is on role of NGO, and if you are using temporal approach, so role of NGO in policy formulation, policy implementation, policy monitoring and feedback, right? These three can be your subheading, and you can establish the interlinking like this, right? So in this, if you see the question, in light of persistence of various forms of violence against women in India, discuss ways in which issue can be addressed. So basically various forms of violence in India, violence against women in India. He has used the temporal approach. So before birth, infant, childhood, puberty, married woman, old age. And simply he has written the points. He has established the interlinking or the evolution. Right. So with the limited space, using the presentation and dimensions that he has covered, So total in single page itself, he has covered 12 dimensions. Right? So this is how you bring in the innovations into your answer. So now remember, whenever you are using a temporal approach, there you have the scope to use this kind of the diagram. Okay. Next is again, this is the circular diagram which every one of you know with respect to the vicious and virtuous cycle. It can be used in social justice and it can be used in ethics. Normally what I suggest specifically is in each of your answer of the social justice there has to be at least one circular diagram. In society also you can use this kind of the diagram. This is Gamini Singla, this is Shakti Dubey. She has used it in the environment also. So global warming opens new world of opportunity in Arctic region. So again she has utilized the circular diagram. Global warming, increase in temperature, melting of ice of glaciers, decrease in albedo, more heat will be trapped on earth. Okay. Again, you can use it the flowchart also for that, right? But again, Shakti Dubey, attitude shapes our perceptions and intentions, but behavior is tangible expression of these internal states in the real world actions. So basically, question was on relationship between attitude and behavior. So she has used this flowchart to establish relationship between attitude and behavior. So first, belief, right? So personal belief, peripheral belief, core belief, which shapes your value system, right? Which decides your attitude, right? So attitude can be positive, can be negative, and attitude is manifested in the form of behavior. So this is how you clearly establish the interlinking between the concepts that have been asked in the questions. Right? When the evaluator will see such kind of the diagrams establishing the interlinking, he will automatically understand the content depth or the conceptual clarity that the candidate possesses. Without conceptual clarity, you can't draw this kind of the diagrams. And even if you have the knowledge, if you don't work upon brainstorming and thinking about bringing these dimensions into your answer, so even with your having a content and conceptual clarity, you won't get good marks. Right? And that is precisely what differentiates with the toppers from others. It's not just the content depth that they have, but it also their brainstorming ability and the interlinking ability, okay, which they incorporate through the presentation. Okay. Next, again Shakti Dubey. Again, if you see, it is very simple. Okay. The question is, skill development is crucial factor in reaping demographic dividend. Okay, that is the first statement. And then the second part is talking about national education policy. So first statement is talking about relationship between skill development and demographic dividend. Okay, so here through this diagram she has established it. So demographic dividend will lead to productive dividend. So realization of demographic dividend is dependent upon it requires skill. The simple interlinking, but she has again addressed the implicit demand using this. Right? So it's the understanding of your question and your conceptual clarity. Okay, so whenever the question is asking about the relationship between or cause and effect relationship between any of the two concepts, there you have to remember that you need a diagram. Okay. Again here also, if you see, not in this one, but here, okay. So the question is, cities are economic powerhouse, but they act as ecological black holes. Okay, so discuss how the positive and negative aspect of urbanization interact with each other. Okay, so if you see in the second part, so interaction between the positive and negative aspect. Okay, so creation of large industries. Okay, for example, Bangalore IT hub leads to employment opportunity, India knowledge economy. Okay, this is positive relationship, but negative impact, growth of houses and offices, which again create concretization, absence of green spaces, vehicular emission, SO2, NO2, causes acid rain, global warming, negative impact. Right? And again, the second negative impact. And if you read these points, you just read these points, these are not very unique or content heavy points. Ki growth of houses, concretization and vehicular congestion, absence of green spaces, vehicular emission, acid rain, global warming. Right? These are the general points only. But it is how she has established the interlinking between them, makes them the brownie points. Okay, if you want, you can read the answers of Animesh also. Okay, he has also done the similar way. Right? So here also, the question itself was asking between the interaction between them, discuss how positive, negative aspects of urbanization interact with each other. That is relationship between these two. Again, you have to highlight that using the diagram. Okay. Next, the use of the diagrams and maps. This is a pretty simple one. Only thing I want to add few of the points. Again, every one of you know that the diagrams and maps will give the instant visual appeal, quick communication of the complex ideas, and reflects conceptual clarity. Just remember these three aspects: the processes, models, and your systems. Okay, you need the proper diagrams to elaborate upon these aspects. For example, processes as in the mechanisms. Okay, so the every technical questions from geography, then from art and culture, from science and tech, from internal security, okay, wherever there are the mechanisms like the different aspects of the cyber crime, okay, phishing or all those. Then about the in geography, it will be about the cyclones, temperate cyclones, tropical cyclones, okay, or with respect to acid rain, whatever the mechanisms are there, okay, for any of the technical concept, you need a diagram to explain that mechanism. Okay, wherever, just for example, you had a question on Purvaiya. Okay, so it was related to the monsoon. So in that also you need to specifically explain the mechanism of Purvaiya through the diagram. So here diagram would be a basically map of India where you will be highlighting the direction of the winds to explain the concept of Purvaiya. So here if you see the answers, not this one, this. For example, when the question was on stupa and the pillars, this is how, or this is the preciseness with which he had drawn the diagram. Okay. Second aspect of the mapping. So in the mapping also, the most important aspect in the diagrams and maps is the detailing. And second aspect is the relevance. Okay. Detailing as in each and every map that you are preparing, okay, there has to be the details filled into it. Okay. सिर्फ इंडिया का पूरा मैप निकाल के if you are showing just one place, Okay, then that won't be of any use. If you are drawing a map, it should be detailed, it should highlight the multiple aspects. Okay, at least 5 to 6 points should be highlighted into your map. Second, for diagram also. Okay, so if you see the map drawn by Shubham Kumar, see the level of detailing that he has brought. Again, two important aspects that you have to incorporate into your answers are this: showing the direction and map not to scale. In each and every map, you have to write that. And again, the level of precision that he had brought into your answers and the naming of it. Right? Similarly, if you should see this here also, each and every part has been properly named. Right? This level of the detailing is required into your maps. Okay, these are some more examples. One interesting way, so this is how you build the bridge the content deficit. One example I had given of Ishita Kishore. This is of Shubham Kumar. So this particular question is of world history. So bring out relationship between industrial revolution and advent of imperialism. Okay. So with respect to the imperialism, the new routes discovered after the imperialism, which is highlighting the relationship between industrial revolution and imperialism. And for that, he has used the map. So it has taken more than half of his page just for one point. That is just to build the bridge the content deficit, because 3 pages भरने के लिए इतना content होगा ही नहीं किसी के पास. So this is how you bring the innovations. Right? So ये आपको सब पता है कि Holland went to, or France went to North America, Spain in the South America, Portugal was in the Brazil, then this British was in India, right? This was your Silk Route. No, then there was no direct access from Northwest, which is why they use the sea routes. Now, ये सब आपको पता है. It was just the representation through the diagram, which brings not just bridge the content deficit, but also brings the innovation into your answers. Right? Next, this was the one kind of the diagram which Shruti Sharma used to draw, where she used to draw a very small map and she used to provide the detailed elaboration on each aspect. Again, the use of the map in the ancient and medieval history, contribution of Bhakti movements. So again, Indian map and the Bhakti saints from various regions, Guru Nanak, Kabir, Malik Muhammad Jaisi, Shankar Deva, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Alwars, Eklavya Tukaram, Mirabai. Again, right? So in half of the page, your content will also be filled. Right? This is with respect to the disaster. Right? So India's vulnerability to the landslides. So Western Ghats and regions, Himalayas and regions. Again, along with the content, it also brings the innovation, and that is in the most simplest of the ways. Rather than drawing a bigger map, drawing this small scale map is very easy. Right? It will save your time. But again, the level of the detailing that she has brought in both of the maps, it make it more attractive. Okay? So the point is, first aspect of the diagrams and maps is the relevance. That is, it should be related to the core demand of the question. Unnecessarily map nahi nikalna hai just to highlight 1 or 2 points. Yeah. Second, there has to be the detailing in your diagrams and maps. Okay? Again, this level of the detailing is required. This is the answer of Anudeep Durushatty, AR 1 2017. Last is the charts and graphs, specifically in governance part of GS2 and economics and internal security part of GS3. This kind of the graphs or the charts that you require to highlight. This is the again bar graph. Shubham Kumar. ठीक है. Next, this is the India's energy basket. ठीक है. Then precisely to bring this aspect into your answers in every topic of the economy or the internal security, what we have tried is we have tried to incorporate such kind of the graphs. If you see, this was on budget, so public debt, then again with respect to the fiscal deficit, these were taken directly from the budget document. Okay, so for while doing the economics or internal security or governance, yeah, so wherever you came across such kind of the graphs, you have to practice it, and you have to keep it into your mind that any question on the fiscal deficit or the fiscal policy of the government comes, I am going to incorporate this graph on the fiscal policy, right, or fiscal deficit. Now, the last aspect where you require the maximum of the presentation is the ethics case studies. So in the ethics case studies, there are different ways in which you can improve the presentation and bring the what you can say, the innovation. Okay, first of all, you can use a bar graph to highlight your priorities whenever you are giving your course of action. Okay. The second, wherever you are evaluating the option, that is whenever you are providing the merit and demerit, you can use the different kind of the presentation or the structure. As a, for example, in one merit case study, you can use a table for merit and demerit. In second, you can use the this. Then third, you can simply use the point format. Okay, if there are only two options. So in this way, you have to use the different kind of the structures for your case studies so that your case studies doesn't become monotonous. Because there are 6 case studies and each case study has 4 pages. So if you follow the same structure, introduction, then stakeholders, ethical issues, and same format for the merits and demerits and all, your answer will become very monotonous. That generally doesn't fetch marks. That is why it is, and I have been suggesting this for the past 2 years, and it has given lot of dividend to us. Just this presentation aspect. So different presentations for merits and demerits. Last, or the second last, is the flowchart for course of action. Okay, so let's see how that's done. So for example, this is the bar graph to highlight your priorities. So if you see, this was done by Shruti Sharma, Aditya Srivastava. For example, before giving their course of action, they or highlighting the course of action, they have given the step-by-step process. First step, second step, third step. And also along with it, they have highlighted the priority of it. Same thing was done by Aditya Srivastav, where he has highlighted the priority. So first priority, second priority, third priority. Right? That. Second aspect is use of flowchart to highlight your course of action. Right, this was also the diagram used by one of my student only. Okay, so rather than simply writing into the point, again it has the temporal dimension to it. Right, so as it has the temporal dimension, you can use this. Third is use of the flowchart. This is the answer of Animesh Pradhan. Right, so while highlighting the course of action, okay, in case of the suppose in any case study, so first, because it gives you an edge in terms of highlighting the different possibilities. Right, so the first step that you will be doing, confront the VP directly, then do not put allegation and just state about the discomfort. But if VP continues similar behavior, if he changes his behavior, then your issue is resolved. But if it doesn't change his behavior, then you take further course of action. Right, so this flowchart gives you an opportunity to highlight the different options. Okay, next, again, this is the kind of flowchart that you can use for steps taken. Again, as it has the temporal dimension, you can again use this kind of the flowchart. Next is just highlighting the, again, this is only the innovative aspect only. It has nothing new to it. What he has simply done in the citizen charter related question, rather than using that Mayurbhanj charter, rather than using that as the example, just say here he could have simply written that point. Sorry, adopt best practices. An example, Mayurbhanj model. He could have written it into the point, but the value that he would have derived by writing that point would have been lesser compared to this. So rather than writing it as a point, what he has done, he has drawn a small box around the margin and then given it as the case study, the Mayurbhanj model of citizen charter. Now this increases the value of it because it catches the attraction of the evaluator. The evaluator may miss one of the point, but he won't be missing that particular box. Right, so whenever you are also writing any of the points in any of the GS papers, suppose you are putting global best practice, so rather than writing it into the point, make a box and write it. Again, that will enhance the visibility of your point. Right, this. Now the last part of the session is key things to remember. And now, as I have given so many of the insights with respect to the innovations, so don't get overwhelmed and don't think that the presentation will alone give you marks. Okay, so remember these three things. Okay, your innovations has to be short. If you are drawing a map, don't take entire page. Okay, so innovative has to be short, because if you increase the size of it, then your core content will be compromised. So in any answer, while giving the marks, the first priority is to content. So it carries around 60% of the weightage, not even 60-70% of the weightage. Then you are structuring, which carries 20% of the weightage, and last is your presentation. Okay, so presentation or the diagrams shouldn't come at the cost of the content. Second, the simplicity. Okay, the purpose of the diagrams and purpose of the maps is to simplify the complex things. It's not to make simple things complex. Okay, so you have to keep that in mind. So whatever diagrams, maps, charts, whatever presentation aspects you are using it into the answer, it has to be self-explanatory. Okay, it has to be simple. ठीक है, सिंपल चीज को कॉम्प्लिकेट मत करो, because the purpose of the presentation is to simplify the complicated things. And third, like I said in the diagrams and maps, relevance is the key. Unnecessarily diagrams, graphs, diagrams, graphs, maps unnecessarily nahi dalne. Until and unless there is a relevance, or if it is addressing any of the keyword of the question, then only you have to use it. Okay. And last, avoiding over innovation. कि पूरे का पूरा आंसर ही you are writing it into the flowchart manner. ठीक है, you have to avoid that. ठीक है, is it clear? Yes, all the aspects of the presentation are clear. Any doubts? Notes previous or new? So if you have already read the previous notes, if you have made any highlights, or if you have prepared your own short notes from those notes, you keep the same as your base material and just do the value addition from the updated material into your own notes. Okay, don't completely change the resources. And for other subjects also, if you have your own notes, keep the same as your base notes and do the value addition from your updated X factor notes. Because for the this to ensure the better application of the notes into your answers, the familiarity and the comfort aspect is very important. And if you are already familiar and comfortable with your notes, then continue with it. Just do the value addition. Okay, don't switch to the new one entirely. Okay, jahan pe you don't have the notes, you pick the X factor. So we'll end today's session. All the best. I'll be sharing this PPT in our group, and the X factor notes or ethics will also be uploaded today. Thank you.